We're going to start our discussion of linear algebra with systems of linear equations, something that most people who have made it here are probably already familiar with. On the left, I've got a single linear equation in two variables, like the ones you probably saw all the way back in first year algebra, high school algebra class. From there, you would have taken a step up to linear equations in three variables, like the one on the right, maybe in a pre-algebra or college algebra, pre-calc, excuse me, or college algebra. We're going to need to think of these equations a little more generally. Our definition is going to allow for equations that have any finite number of variables. And since there's a clear possibility that we'll run out of letters, we're going to just use x for every variable, but with an index to represent its place in the equation. Now, the next step up from here is a system of linear equations, which is just multiple linear equations all taken together as a group. Now, to annotate these, we're going to need to add another index to the coefficients. One to tell us which equation the coefficient belongs to. That's going to be the first one. And a second to tell us which variable the coefficient belongs to. Now, a convenient way to remember this is to think of the first index as representing the row the coefficient is in, and the second coefficient, the second index represents the column that it's in. So I'm summarizing everything we saw on the last slide here. We've got a system of linear equations on the left, and notice that I do have a slightly different scheme for the constants on the right-hand side of the equal sign. They get their own variables, right? Instead of just being x sub n plus 1, for example. And the reason for that is that there are going to be times when we really need to think of those as distinct from the coefficients. So it'll be convenient to have a different variable to use to refer to them. Now, a solution to the system is a set of numbers, S1 through Sn. It's an ordered n-tuple that satisfies all of the equations in the system. And collectively, all of the solutions together are what we're going to call the solution set. Okay, so let's look at this in a little more detail here, because if that seems like a really messy, complicated way to write this, you're not wrong. And it turns out we can do better. So I've got several examples of systems of linear equations here. And I want you to take a look at them for a minute and think about what they all have in common. Right? Hopefully what stands out to you pretty quickly is they all have the same variables. Right? They all have a bunch of x1s and a bunch of x2s and a bunch of x3s. And I kept them all the same size here, right? It's a 3x3 system of equations in three variables. But if we go to different sizes, the same thing still applies. The variables that we see are completely predictable. They're completely defined by the size of the system. So from our mathematical perspective, those really aren't the interesting part here. The interesting parts are the coefficients. Those are the things that we're really going to want to focus on. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull out the coefficients, and I'm going to focus on the second one in from the left here. We're going to pull out those coefficients, put them into this grid, right? And this grid is what we call a matrix. Now, I'm sure you notice here, I only did the coefficients on the variables, right? Sometimes that's what we're going to want to talk about, and sometimes we are going to want to talk about the complete set, including the constant terms on the right-hand side. And these individual matrices have names, right? The first one where we just have the variable coefficients, that's called the coefficient matrix. And the one where we've added in the constant terms, that's called the augmented matrix, an augmented matrix. Okay, so just the formal definition here, a matrix is a collection of numbers and or variables arranged in rows and columns. So do you see why I wanted to talk about them? The indices as rows and columns on the previous slide, right? I was kind of looking ahead to these matrices, and when we're looking at this grid, it's very natural to think of it in terms of rows and columns. Before we start drilling down into methods for finding the solutions to these systems of linear equations, there's the equations break down into two different categories that we need to be aware of. And I'm going to illustrate these using a 2x2 system, two equations with two variables, but the definitions apply even to much larger systems. So the first possibility that I have illustrated here uh, is where there's a single solution, a single pair of numbers, right? And to see the difference between these two categories, I think it helps for us to look at the situation geometrically. So if we think of these two equations as representing the equations of two lines in a plane, this situation looks like this, right? We have two non-parallel lines and they intersect each other at a single point. Okay, so that's one option. Another option is this situation here. Now, if you look closely, you see these two equations, they really are identical. They both represent the same line. So if I were to do this visually, it's a little hard to draw because it's two lines that perfectly overlap, right? But we have a situation here where there are infinitely many solutions. Now, the third possibility is illustrated by these two equations. If you look and you remember back to your college algebra class, these two lines are going to have the same slope and different y-intercepts, which means that the lines are parallel. So in this situation, we have no solutions. The two lines never cross. Okay, so the first two results where we did get solutions, we're going to group together. We're going to call those consistent systems. And solutions that fall into the third category here where there are no solutions, we're going to call inconsistent. So before we move on to methods for finding the solutions to these systems, I want to be clear about a geometric point that I think often trips students. In your algebra classes, you spend a lot of time talking about the graphs of two variable linear equations, graphs that are always going to be lines. And now it's a mistake to think that that's going to carry on to equations with more than two variables. Take this equation here, for example. You can quickly verify that these 3 points all satisfy the equation, but if you make a quick sketch of them, you should see right away that they clearly aren't collinear. In fact, they form a triangle. So the graph of the complete solution set of this equation is going to be a plane, not a line. Okay, so this table here summarizes all of what happens for various numbers of variables. If your equation has one variable, the solution would be a point. Two variables, the solutions would be a line. Three variables, you get a plane. And for any number of variables greater than 3, 4 and higher, we just can generalize and call them all hyperplanes. So I've got a system of linear equations here and its corresponding augmented matrix. So to further connect these two ideas, let's walk through the solution of the system using both notations. All right, so on the left-hand side, I'm going to use the method that you learned back in your algebra classes. And on the right-hand side, I want you to see how this is mirrored in our matrix notation. Okay, so first I'll add the second equation to the third and replace the third equation with the result. This simplifies the system, right, by canceling out the x1 term from the second equation. Now, if we do the same operations to the second and third rows of the matrix, we get this new result. And what I want you to notice here is that this new matrix is the augmented matrix of the new system, the system that we got by making that change to the third row. So next I'll multiply the first equation by -2 and add that to the second equation, replacing the second equation with this result, right? So that now we've eliminated the x1 terms from both of the second two equations. And doing the same operation to the coefficients in the matrix gives us this new version. And again, notice that this is the augmented matrix of the new system. Okay, now we can eliminate the x2 variable from the second equation by multiplying the third equation by 4, adding it to the second, and replacing the second equation with the result. So now we've almost got the result that we need for x3 in the second equation. We can get to that variable's final value by dividing both sides of the equation by 11, and again dividing all the coefficients in the second row of the matrix by 11. Now finally, I'm going to switch the second and third rows to get the triangular version of the matrix. We'll be more specific exactly about what that means a little later on. So from here, we can continue the process of eliminating values to solve for all of the other two values, or we can fall back on the system of equations and back substitute to get those values. In other words, I take 5, put it into x3 in the second equation. They give me an equation that I can solve for x2, and take those values of x2 and x3, put them into the first equation, and I would get an equation that I could solve for x1. So that example illustrates how we can map the operations that you've already seen for solving systems of linear equations to corresponding operations that we can perform on a matrix. So these three operations, switch, scale, and replace, are what we call the elementary row operations. And two matrices are called row equivalent if one can be transformed into the other using just these three elementary row operations. So the next lecture, we're going to take these really kind of very general ideas and do two things. First, we're going to turn them into a formal argument, something with a well-defined sequence of steps that, for example, you could take and write software around, right, to have a computer implement this algorithm. And the second, we're going to answer the two questions the mathematicians always ask about this sort of thing, and that's existence and uniqueness. So we're going to see first how to tell when a system of linear equations has a solution, and when it does have solutions, we'll see how to tell when they're unique. When there's a single solution versus when there are infinitely many solutions.